And
Hello.
yep, Mama Malina, and it's the Epiphany today.
Yeah,
So it's the last day of the Christmas season.
yeah.
So the final Merry Christmas to everyone, and welcome to 2026. And today is the feast where Christ is recognized by the kings. So it's the day where we get all the presents traditionally. I think in some places also the day where they actually do get the presents. Uh, in that way, the kings come from far away, having seen the star at Bethlehem. So we're reading my book, Thriving at Nature's Pace. Here it is. Uh, and I wrote this, but my mum can't see well enough. And so she's asked me, what is it about? So I said, why don't we read it together? It would be nice. I'll come every morning and then we can spend a bit of time reading before I go off and do my things. And so we've been doing that. Please join us and share and kind of get subscribe along. Let people know. So we at the part of the chapter where we're talking about first things first, and this book is about how we can see climate change with a new approach, with a different way. And in fact, the way that I think about it now is that really it's taking us to a new future. So the book talks about how we can have the new future that we want. But to get there, we have to think about our current future, a little bit like that. And actually, I like this way of looking at that. I was just telling someone this morning, because it means the future is not like some big truck charging at us. It's actually something that we can drive ourselves, which makes it much nicer. So back to the book where we left off. Where we left off was talking about how the climate change is affecting things, and what the implications are when talking about the implications a bit on food. So joining from there. So in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, countries feared the implication on food, actually. This pushed grain prices up. In the same year, the effect of a particularly strong El Nino is a weather pattern over most of the world, actually, brought droughts to many countries. While the El Nino is a natural phenomenon, there's growing evidence that worsening climate change leads to stronger El Nino events. This impacted the production of rice and other grains. By the latter half of the year, over 30 countries had imposed export bans on agricultural products to protect their own food supply. This added sharply to food prices globally and exposed border tensions between countries. As an indication of the extent to which the world is overextended, the world stock-to-use ratio for grains, that's how much you've got in store versus how much you use. So it's kind of like if you think about, how much rice do you have in your cupboard over how much you use every day. It's about 30%. That means there's 4 months worth of grains in stock. With the prospect that climate change can cause harvests to fail in multiple regions in the world at the same time, it's not a lot of spare capacity. So we remember sort of the biblical story of, was it Joseph, that he built these things to store 7 years. We've got nothing like that in store. Climate change issues will appear economically through trade and military conflicts. Just like the overinflated balloon, fingers will point to specific triggers when it bursts. Everyone will argue over whether it was a sharp fingernail or the sun shining on it. They will pass over the fact that the balloon was overinflated, which made bursting inevitable. However, despite this, the tendency is to insist that being overinflated has nothing to do with it. Mum obviously was always telling us never to stretch things, push things too far, because she knows you can't do that. This is the same with the economy. The economy is overextended. Climate change is making this worse. If this continues, it's inevitable that the economy will collapse. However, when it begins to fail, fingers will point to other reasons. People will insist that climate change has nothing to do with it. The truth still will remain that being overextended in the face of climate change means it is a matter of when and not if the economy will collapse. So the way that actually works, if you think about it, is if you keep spending more money than you've got, you know it's going to cause a problem. But when it does cause a problem, it'll be the last thing you spend that everybody will say that's the reason, rather than the fact that you've kept spending too much money. And that's what we're doing with our economy. Precisely when it bursts is a matter of how confidence changes as the economy responds to climate change. It's a psychology that determines this. The received wisdom is always to talk up the economy. This is not always helpful. Despite every effort to maintain confidence, when things get serious, history has shown that it can be destroyed in a moment. The economy can look perfect one day and be an utter mess the next. Everybody is then left wondering what happened. And we've seen this lots and lots of times. The Asian tigers in the 1990s, for example, collapsed overnight. These were the fast-growing Asian economies. One moment, they were the model economies everybody talked about. That gravity-defying rapid growth was the envy of all. Then in 1997, they toppled one after another like dominoes. Thailand started first, then others followed. Even the technologically advanced countries like South Korea went bankrupt. And I remember this. The South Korean government had to call on its citizens to hand in their families' gold jewelry. And the government sold them to buy oil and food. So just imagine the government actually coming out and saying everybody has to hand in their gold so that the country can have oil to heat themselves and buy food for everyone. A similar thing happened in 2008. This time it was to the richest countries. Mortgages collapsed in the US, triggering a lending crisis. This cause was excessive lending from banks and mortgage institutions, helping people buy houses. They lent with the full blessing of governments and regulators to anyone who applied, including people who clearly could not pay back their debt. It happened because the prevalent belief was that the future will be better. And in that rosy future, house prices will be higher. Even if borrowers defaulted on their payments, the house will always be sold for more. Unfortunately, it did matter that borrowers could not pay. And we know that all the time, but we always forget about it. Debt levels today are much higher than they were heading into in the crisis in 2008. Governments no longer have the ability to borrow the way out of trouble. Liz Truss, in a short-lived role as the UK's Prime Minister in 2022, tried to borrow to finance our economic plans. This brought chaos as pensions and investment funds refused to lend. They no longer saw the future as rosy. Liz Truss was forced to resign after just 45 days. Investors may not want to lend to governments, but they're very willing to proffer the story of a rosy future to ask governments for money for projects like building large wind farms and solar farms. This leaves governments stuck on what to do. It forces them to borrow even on bad terms. This situation is going to get worse as climate change impacts worsen. Debt, even for rich countries, will become an ever-tightening debt. So this is us asking our governments to do all the things we want them to do, and at the same time, not wanting to lend to put up the money. Climate change is now an everyday reality. In this reality, waiting is no longer an option. Action needs to be taken that can help people thrive. Received wisdom is still anchored on calling on governments for money to fix things. In this thinking, if the money does not come, hope is lost. Worse, if people do things for themselves, then the rationale to call for money is gone. So it traps people into holding back on doing things themselves and locks them into a position of being victims, just so that they can keep on calling for the money that's not there. And that's a really bad situation because it means that you can't actually be who you are. To regain hope, something new has to be tried. This has to reward people for helping themselves. As climate change is global, this must connect people together through their actions. There is hope. Nature's economy does not rely on debt to thrive. Modern humans can take lessons from this. In nature, resources are always abundant. Modern society needs to see resources through nature's eyes. Nature allows giant leaps to come about through tiny steps. It thrives without having to presume that tomorrow will be better than today. The model economy can do the same. Growth can emerge even without the trillions of dollars that will not come. So that's the end of that first chapter. Thoughts, Mum?
How can it be tomorrow will be better?
How can it be?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily going to be, but I think we have a calling in our hearts to do what we can for our children, for the places that we love, for the things that we care for. And that's what it means for it to be better. We have to listen to our calling and respond to that. And I think that's what that should be. But we tend to see tomorrow being better as whether I have a better house or a better car. But those things are going to be very much at risk. We've seen lots of pictures of how our better cars get washed away in floods, even in Hong Kong. And our better house gets flooded as well. But what we need is that sense that actually we are there together with each other. And it's not the money, but it's the together. Does that answer it a bit?
Yeah, but you see, just like the big fire in Hong Kong,
Yes.
it just destroyed everything.
Yes, and that will happen. And more of those things may happen. So when they happen, we have to be able to step forward and not be stuck on being angry with each other. When we get caught too much in the angry with each other, then we trap ourselves and we can't go forward. We end up blaming everyone. And maybe people are to blame, but the problem is blaming everyone doesn't actually get us past the blame. So, okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. We'll come back tomorrow for the next chapter along. About the same time. It all depends on how Mum is and how things are. It's the Epiphany. It's the last day of Christmas. So a last Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Bye.